Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. Today we're going to talk about math and Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. Oh snap, oh snappity snap, oh snappity snap and a half. You know what? No, make it a whole. I don't know. I'm just saying words down, but I'm excited. If you couldn't tell, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children is one of my favorite movies. It's a big part of like Final Fantasy VII at this point, and it has left quite a legacy. And I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into the story. I'm going to get into the music. Oh my God, I'm going to get into that music. I'm going to get into a little bit of everything and talk about how math is used throughout and around. And I look forward to that a lot. Because, it's like I wanted to make this video for a long time. And then when they announced that Advent Children was coming to theaters, like in the US, I wanted to talk about it even more. And then I saw that in theaters twice, both subbed and dubbed. And then life was doing its thing. Life was lifing. So I haven't gotten a chance to dig in until now. So here's how this is going to go. Like all the things I said, sure, but assume that there will be spoilers, right? There's definitely going to be spoilers about Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, right? I'm going to be talking about some things, going back and forth between like how math is used and also like talking about some plot points, some fights. And so yeah, spoilers are here for that, but you're free to assume that there will be spoilers for everything Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII, the original, also Remake, Rebirth, Crisis Core, Dirge of Cerberus, Last Order, which they don't count in the compilation of Final Fantasy VII anymore, but it was a good movie, but I'm digressing. Assume that there's spoilers for all Final Fantasy VII pieces. Compilation. Okay, so spoilers ahead. Let's get into it. I don't know what that was. I don't know. I'm excited. Let's do it. Okay, so with Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, to give a little background before expanding, it originally came out in 2005. It was the first year of college for me. Also, it was my first semester for that matter. And if you're familiar with my channel, that won't shock you. If you haven't, it may. I don't know, but back then, I was sad that I couldn't see it. But I had seen like clips, and back then there used to be like a lot of AMVs, like in the early YouTube days, and for a while. And so there was definitely some for Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. This is a bit of a tangent, but we'll circle back. I don't know. I'm going to just cut loose here. So with one video that I saw, it was the fight between Kadaj and Cloud, like the last one for the big final part of the movie, and it was playing. The music that was chosen for the AMV was "Revenge" by System of a Down. Awesome song, and that was my introduction to System of a Down. However, there was no point, all right? There's no point because thematically it worked. I won't deny that. But the song that was playing during that fight in the actual movie is so freaking awesome. So you have Genova, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children version, right? That's what's playing during that fight in the movie. And it is my favorite Final Fantasy song. Genova is like one of the best songs, and I think it kind of like plays second fiddle to like One Wing Angel, which is unfortunate because it is a monster of a song. And then you get to Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, and they just kicked it up a notch. Just like pretty much, let's take Genova but make it metal. It has this like the typical whimsical opening, but then there's like a second part of that intro where it's just like, I don't know. I don't know, but it's freaking dope. And I'm gonna talk about that some more later. But I bring it up though because like I had seen bits and pieces of it for a while and different AMVs and stuff like that. And there's like not a musical piece in Advent Children that I would change. And I get that with AMVs, the maker is making a choice, and again like it was thematically appropriate, but it's like, nah, that's disrespectful. That song that was playing in the original movie, that Genova remix, that was like top notch. It's like, don't do that. But anyway, I eventually did get to see Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. I originally saw it subbed. I would eventually go on to see it dubbed, and I've seen it dubbed, subbed, original, complete, on my computer, on a monitor, and as of this year, time of recording, big screen, on the big screen. I don't know. I am sorry, but not sorry at the same time for my energy in this video. Like, I can't express to you how much I dig this movie, but I'm gonna try. So the thing with Advent Children, like, to kind of like branch into some of the topics that I wanted to talk like mathematically, because I've been digressing hard, is that like there's a lot that went into it, right? A lot of time and a lot of money. And, these are inherently mathematical things, but we could dig in a little bit more, right? So the idea is with Advent Children, you might have already seen it, so you know the basics of the plot, but the idea is it takes place a few years after the events of Final Fantasy VII. And that's used as a way to, kind of tell you what happens next, sure, but it also just sets up a bunch of cool, crazy fights. Like, that, to be honest, are dope as hell. Like, so the idea is there are these three forces, these remnants, Kadaj, Laz, and Yazoo, and they are remnants of Sephiroth, embodying different aspects of his personality. And their idea is to take the remains of Jenova and pretty much make the next Sephiroth. Kind of crazy plot, but while they're doing that, you get a better sense of like what Tifa's been doing and what Cloud's been doing. You don't get a lot on the rest of the crew, but you know that they've been in touch and that Cloud is kind of a lousy friend. Just saying. But so in the movie, you see what happens is they encounter, our heroes encounter the remnants and how that progresses. And one of the big parts of the movies are the aforementioned dope as hell fights. And here's the thing about them, right? They're very well choreographed, very interesting, and at each and every step, math, right? Because there's math in the positions of the people in said fights, right? And what they're doing in said fights, the speeds at which they're going, the different positions and angles that are being used. There's a lot of crazy things going on with the camera, so that shifting of perspective, there's a lot of math in that, and the framing of every bits and pieces, right? And then you got to figure, right, there's a lot of math in like character design, right? Like how big a character is going to be, their different features, different weapons, how they move with those weapons, the actions that are taken. There was some motion capture involved in that, and so there's math in it too. And honestly, I think it touches on some things just in general that I like, because it's like with fights, right? You're dealing with a lot of motion. Motion is very mathematical, and in general, we live in a universe of motion, a universe of shapes, and there's math in both of those things. And there was a lot of deliberate parts of those fights, right? Really all of it, right? Because they had to be constructed. And so there's math in like I said, the set pieces, the character designs, scaling, the camera perspective, the motions, the lighting, the angles, the sound, the music that accompanies the fights. And we're gonna get into the music a little bit more. But yeah, so it's just like, and all of it is so deliberate. All of it is just, it's wonderful, because right, they had to take into account like all the things that I said, and then like program that in, see how it played out after they drew it up and designed everything, and all that, and just taking things frame by frame and making it all work. And that's math, and that's art, and that's freaking cool. And again, the fights are dope as hell. And determining how long those fights are matters, right? Like that had to be determined too. And there's math in that. And throughout, we see these like beautifully designed areas, that we are all too familiar with, and some that maybe we're not, or some where we were familiar with them, but we're seeing them in a different light. And so I think that's all like cool. because like there's math and designing the areas and the scaling, the perspectives that are used, how light is being used with those two, and I think that's all cool. And there's so much money that goes into a project like that, and it made a decent amount of money over the years. Um, and so, with that in mind, like I mentioned a lot, but I wanted to mention the music in particular. So, like, sound is something that is inherently mathematical, right? And music in particular. And I think music is one of those things that it's a little bit more accessible in terms of talking to people about mapping and everything, because once you start to break it down, you could see it a lot easier, right? Like and so when you think about the music in Final Fantasy VII, it's just Advent Children. It's oh my god, it's complex and it's beautiful. It's nuanced. I want to talk about music in general, and then I want to like get into that a bit more. So when it comes to music in general, right? There's math in the music and what it is just to the extent of it being sound, right? And the characteristics therein. But so there's math in what music is, math and the notes, how they're composed, how they're structured, how they work together, the timing of the notes, sure, but in the case of the movie, how that works in conjunction with the battles and scenes taking place. And all of that's measured, all of that's constructed. And again, really cool. The battles were just such a great way to depict a bit of everything, because like you had all the cool choreography, but the music, right? It was well timed. There's certain, bits of there's certain pieces of the music that would happen at certain intervals. And I want to talk about like one such case in a little bit, but the idea is like music is very involved in terms of math, right? Not just in addition to the like composure, but and the timing, but also like different qualities of sound, and just like how long are you holding this note? How long are you holding it? No, what volume are you playing it? If you're playing something that's a little bit more complex and has like several instruments going in, like how are you blending things together so you're not like having this one sound overtake the other? How do you map that out, right? And as you're playing a piece of like the timing there is key too, because if you have multiple instruments, or different segments of that song, it's like, oh, how are you sliding this in, and how does that work within the context of the movie, scene to scene? And I just think all that's cool, because it's like there's math in how it's implemented and math in designing it, And so one interesting example that I wanted to bring up is that fight with Kadaj towards the end, because I like the fight with Sephiroth at the end too, but like I really like the one with Kadaj because well, the Genova theme that's playing throughout that, I think is really great. I can't stress that enough. So what I thought was really cool with that is like, there's a part where it sounds like, whimsical in the beginning, and it's starting to build up to something. And, at that point, Cloud and Kadaj are, fighting. And then towards the end of that more whimsical sounding section, there's like, change to like a more fast-paced action section, and that's the part where they're like they begin to fight, they're clashing. And what I like about it is like, so we talked about the music, we talked about the fights, and how both of these things have like math, right? And then like how to connect this is interesting. And I bring up this example because there's that part where the whimsical section is ending, and like Kadaj like shoots a blast just as it ends, and like it's about to hit Cloud. Cloud kind of takes his sword and like does a thrust upward, and that's when the music's kind of playing, and then that fast-paced section is going on, and then they kind of transition to the point where the crew shows up and they're talking, and then you start to hear the more familiar Genova theme as it goes on throughout the fight. And as it's starting to wrap up, the song is starting to wrap up, and it's done really well. And then the transition in between that track and leading into Advent One Wing Angel is done really well. And all of this is deliberate. All of this is math. And that is so cool. And so there's so many other things that you could talk about with this. But I want to switch gears and talk about some more like how I felt about the story and how I felt about seeing things in theaters. So like I said, Having Children came out back when I was in college. I eventually got to see it back then, right? And I saw it a bunch of different ways. But here's the thing, right? Like I didn't just see it by myself. I would see it like with a friend or with several friends, with relatives, stuff like that. Whether they were a fan of Final Fantasy VII or not, whether they had seen it already or not. And I dug it. I dug it hard. It was a big part of my college years, and it was like very impactful. And I thought it was just so cool. And again, the music, I can't stop talking about that enough because I dug the fights. I dug just going back to that world of Final Fantasy 7. And the only thing I dug more than like the fights and all that good stuff is just the music that accompanied those fights and accompanied the other scenes that weren't there, that weren't fighting, right? Because it's like with that music, they could have just had you know, the tracks from the original games, and maybe you would have gotten some people that complained it, but the original Final Fantasy VII track is crazy, right? It's good, it's great. But they didn't just pick original tracks; they rearranged some of those tracks in some new and refreshing ways, while kind of having like the rearrangement covers for some others. But that's not all, right? They had new tracks that like kicked hard, right? Like I think like the two examples that come to mind are Black Water. That's the music where you hear during Kadaj when he's talking to the kids and everything, and he's getting into the water and all that. Like that track that's playing is like, oh my god, like that's a metal track. Violator's another good one. And as far as the arrangements go, and the remixes, whatever you want to call them, Genova Final Fantasy VII Advent Children version and Advent One Wing Angel were probably the two best examples for me that just like kicked. Then you got like bits and pieces that were of songs that were used in other songs, like different motifs and stuff like that. Oh, also another track that I really liked, Battle in the Forgotten City. The music that's playing when they are in the forest. That is an amazing song. It's got so much going on in it, right? Like, because I feel like it has a nice solid intro that builds up, and it's like the music. There's a segment that you hear like when Cloud's like pulling up on the bike, and then when the fight starts, it just kicks in the high there, and then it's going on and on and on, and it just escalates. You start hearing the violins, and it's just like, oh my god, what is happening? I don't know. I'm so excited about it. It's just like it's so cool, and just like there were so many nice moments like that where you hear some songs, right, and they're kind of more or less the same sort of trying to think of a good way to say it. They're going on at the same sort of tempo, but then there's some of the fight scenes, for instance, where there's like a build up, right? There's like some quieter part, and then you get some action going on, and then it kind of escalates, right? And it's really well done. Yeah. So anyway, I really dug that, watching that movie, watching it with people and getting to share. I watched the movie a million times. I watched different clips a million times, and I saw it a million different ways. And until this year, I had never gotten to see it on the full screen. And I really dug it because it's just like it held up to me. I first saw it dubbed because that's all I found. I wanted to see a sub, not because in general I have a preference one way or the other, but in this case I actually do. Just for this movie. Well, some other things too, but like in this case, I had seen it subbed first, so I wanted that. But I couldn't find a spot at first. But then, I was so hyped after seeing it in theaters that I went and looked to see if there was a spot for the sub, and there was. So it's like I got to see it dubbed, I got to see it subbed, I got to hear that beautiful, wonderful music on the big screen through those speakers. I got to hear it. I got to see everything on the big screen. Also, what I noticed is, like, for whatever reason, the lighting was different on the nights that I saw it, so it was a kind of a different experience with that. But anyway, I like the stories. It was cool to see the characters again. There was a lot of focus on Cloud, which, I'm indifferent about. It was nice to see a lot of Tifa in that movie, and I wish the other characters got to, do more. And so, like I said at the beginning, there's spoilers, and mostly I've been keeping it light into having children, but I'm going to just like say whatever now, which you're probably okay with if you stuck around. But just wanted to preface that because I wanted to talk about some things like about the movie that kind of stick around. Like I feel like there was a lot done musically that kind of stuck because you would see new themes in different games and you'd see like a million covers of different pieces too. And I felt like the legacy of awesome music bleeds through in Remake, but especially Rebirth. Also, one thing I noticed about having children over years, and especially upon rewatching it, is that like for the remnants, right? Like Kadaj mostly operates on his own throughout that movie. He definitely gets more time in the spotlight than like Laws and like Yazoo. But here's the thing about Laws and Yazoo. Um, they have a lot of synergy going on. And I bring that up because I think not only is that cool, not only do you see with them, you also get to see once all the crew is there, when they're taking on Bahamut, you get to see their synergy. And I bring all this up partially because it's cool and it's deliberate and mathematical, but also because in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, we get synergy skills and synergy abilities, and they play off the characters really well. And I think, with Avid Children, that kind of set the tone, and you could kind of see that influence all over Remake and all over Rebirth. And the idea of synergy, like, coming back, I think is really cool. And, like, it's definitely been in my mind, partially because I saw the movie and I could respect the synergy, but also having played Rebirth, it's just like, I can see what they kind of did there. So it's interesting to see that sort of legacy, but also just in general, I think, like, at least from my perspective, after that, like, the cinematic scale and scope of having children, not to say that there weren't cinematic points in different Final Fantasy games, there absolutely was. It's just like the more action-oriented stuff and the scale and scope increased. And I think that's pretty cool. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that influenced some things out there in terms of the way some action pieces are done. At least in the Final Fantasy world, but I would wager, different movies and shows, maybe, take from that as well as some other sources or get inspired. So, overall, right, with Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, there's a story, sure, and I like the story. It's a good story. Story I know very well at this point. But the main star isn't the story, and it isn't Cloud for Advent Children. It's the music for starters, because oh my god, the music, but also the battles. And there's a nice way to just like look at things, because like they were concerned with doing cool stuff and having fun, and it showed. And I know that Advent Children has its detractors, and they're free to have their opinion, but it's a awesome movie, and it's dope. And I dig it, and I watched it a lot during my early years in college, and like periodically throughout. And I got to see it in on the big screen. I got to see it in theaters for the first time, and I did it twice. So it's like that was cool. That was really cool. Oh, also, on the second night when I went to see it, I saw like two people that came in together. One was cosplaying as Tifa, one was cosplaying as Aerith, and that was cool. And so I'm probably going to be closing this down a little bit, but I wanted to say, in terms of legacy, and story-wise, Advent Children has absolutely impacted Remake and Rebirth, because like the whole thing is like, right, they're connected, because like you have this idea that it's a remake trilogy that we're building up to, right? But it's just like, I mean, yeah, it's a remake, but it's also like a reboot. It's also a sequel. And what I think is interesting is Sephiroth and Aerith, because it's like, yeah, Sephiroth and Cloud is cool. Their rivalry is epic. Their rivalry is iconic. But with it's a different kind of personal thing with Aerith and Sephiroth, because like with Cloud, it's more one-sided in terms of his hate, right? He has a very personal vendetta with Sephiroth, as he should, but Sephiroth does not have that same level of hate. He just he likes to torture him though. But with Aerith, it's just like they are so diametrically opposed in what they stand for in every conceivable way. And I feel like with Advent Children, it was interesting because like we see Aerith like operating beyond the grave, just as Sephiroth is. And I think that when you get to the new stuff, that plays out more. Because like it's like Sephiroth gets more power, Aerith gets more power, and also I feel like the fans gave Sephiroth the level of crazy power he gets because people like that dude, and I feel like creators responded to that over the years, making him ridiculously OP if he wasn't considered that by the end. And yeah, so I think it's fascinating, and just like also the whole Genoa and Sephiroth thing, but that's a whole nother story for another day. But you can't divorce those two. There's probably more I wanted to say, but I'm gonna leave you with this. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children is an awesome movie. I had a blast with it, watching it back in the day. I had a blast with it watching it a few months ago at the time of this recording. It's great, and I'm probably gonna watch it a million more times in my lifetime. I will see you in the future. Professor Prime out.